Hi and welcome. In this tutorial you will learn how to animate your TextMesh Pro sprites in two ways. First, for cases where you know which sprite will be shown in your text box, and the second for cases where the displayed sprite might be chosen more dynamically. For this to work, you will need to have watched my previous tutorial on how to use sprites in TMP. I won't be covering the basics in here. And of course a sprite sheet for stuff you want to have animated. I'll link the ones I used in the video's description. The basic syntax you'll need to animate sprites is super simple. Sprite anim equals 011, but it can be extended in several ways. Let's take it apart. Sprite is for using a sprite, obviously. Anim is for telling TMP that we will be using an animation for this. This tag will create a TMP animator on your game object. The first number is the index of the sprite inside your sprite asset you'll be starting from. The second is the last sprite of your sequence. The third is your frames per second. I'll call it speed from here on. Works better with my brain. Pick a higher number and your animation will play faster. If you make these numbers negative, your animation is going to run backwards. If you're using multiple sprite sheets, for example working with button prompts for multiple devices as explained in this video, you can tell your animation to pick a sprite to animate from a dedicated sprite sheet by extending the tag like this. Let's build a system to help us automate picking the correct sprites. We'll write a monoBehavior class and call it animate sprites based on ID. We will need a message to display, a keyword to look for, which will be replaced with a corresponding sprite asset, and I will also add an int for speed. Float works as well. Tell your script where to get the TMP component and have it stored. In start, we will write the message into the text box by using a small replacer script. If our message doesn't contain the keyword we were looking for, we will return the initial message. Next, we have multiple options for how to tackle finding the corresponding sprite for our keyword in the sprite asset. Case A. You have one big sprite asset containing a lot of sprites. In this case, we will need to tell our script which TMP sprite asset we are going to use at the top of our script. Search for a sprite with the name of our keyword inside our sprite asset. Of course, our initial sprite name inside the sprite asset for this first frame needs to be the same as our keyword for this to work. We will need to save the index to an int value to use it. In this case, we will replace our keyword like this. Message is equal to message.replace, the keyword to look for, and it will be replaced by the sprite animation tag. We use the index of assigned sprite as our initial starting frame and give it the end frame like this. You might have guessed that for this to work flawlessly, you will either need a sprite sheet in which all your animation frames have the same number of frames for everything you want to have animated, or instead, you will have to write a list of how many frames belong to which keyword. If that's how your game is going to work, I highly recommend using the upcoming case B. But if your sprite sheet's full of simple animations like button prompts that show an activated as well as an inactivated state of button to press, it works neatly. Case B. You have multiple TMP sprite assets, each one containing a complete animation sequence just for one sprite. This is awesome and will make your life so much easier. I honestly recommend going this route when it comes to animations. It is possible that your animations might need different animation speeds, like my button and the running cat I use in this tutorial. To make this possible and easy for us to set up, we will create a new script, a struct called sprite animation speed, with a TMP sprite asset as well as a float variable. Have it be serializable so we can fill it in the inspector. To organize our sprite assets, create a new scriptable object. It will only have a list of our newly created sprite animation speed entries. Create it in the editor and fill it up with the sprite assets you'll need. If you know the speed your sprites should be flipped through, fill it in too. Otherwise, experiment and tweak the values later. I created a new script for the replacer, but you can just change the original one. The basics stay roughly the same. We will get rid of the speed value first and replace our TMP sprite asset with our scriptable object. Inside our replace with tag function, add a null TMP sprite asset and speed value of 0. We will have our code look through the list of entries in our scriptable object and check for a sprite asset with a name matching our used keyword. If there is a match, we will save the asset to our variable, as well as the speed to our speed too. Since we don't need to look any further, we'll jump out of the for each at this point. If our sprite asset stayed null though, we will want to be noticed about it and return the initial string. Otherwise, we need to know the frames and sequence of our sprite asset. It should be at least 0. We need to get the count -1 to get the last animation frame. Our replacer will now change a bit too. We still want to replace the keyword, of course, but this time we will add the sprite asset to use. The animation will start at 0 and end at our frames and sequence value. The speed will be the one we got from the corresponding struct. This might be a bit bigger, but I feel like this is much more robust than the version in case A. Give it a try, it should work correctly now. And remember, you can just tweak your values inside the scriptable object. Lastly, a few good to know things. If your sprite sheet is out of order for whatever reason, you can rearrange your sprites inside the sprite asset like this. You are not able to pick out which particular sprites belong in a sequence. This syntax wants you to have your sprites in a consecutive order. You can resize your sprite asset with the size tag. And lastly, if your sprite asset refuses to show up, you might have not saved it to the correct TMP folder. Happens to me all the time. If you want to continue building handy systems for TextMesh Pro, I recommend giving my tutorial on automatically tagging certain keywords a watch. In my last tutorial on button prompts, you will learn how to get the correct buttons or key bindings to display. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Please let me know if you did. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I love the feedback. Have a great day.